Greetings, Oklahoma HOSA chapter advisors. This is Rhett Laubach coming to you from my home studio in Edmond. Hey, it's a privilege to spend a few minutes with you today. I want to start out by saying thanks for being an advisor at HOSA. Thanks for being a teacher. Thanks for helping your students figure out how to stay engaged in their education and stay engaged in their HOSA activities during this COVID-19 influence time. Hey, the whole purpose of the next few minutes in this video is to give you some ideas and some encouragement on how to help your HOSA members stay engaged in HOSA activities during the next few months and maybe even into next year. And so let's begin with what I think is the most important thing, and that is that the membership, they really need to see you having fun during these times. We know how much struggle is going on. We know how much stress everyone is under. The students get that. They're obviously, as you well know, are under a lot of stress, under a lot of changes. But when they see you having fun, when they see you embracing how we can continue the important elements as well as the fun elements, even the social elements of our HOSA activities, then that really feeds into their continued involvement and engagement and want to be involved in HOSA. So that's number one. So why does it matter? Why does it matter that you're spending a few minutes with me, taking some notes and writing down some ideas on how to get and keep your membership engaged in HOSA activities? Well, as my good friend Mr. Kelly Barnes says, doing something virtual is better than doing nothing at all. Doing something virtual is better than doing nothing at all. And so I applaud all of you that's watching this that either have already or who are going to begin engaging your students in any opportunities that you can in the virtual settings as it pertains to HOSA activities. Now, throughout our short time together, I'm going to use the word platform, okay, just as a placeholder to represent all the virtual platforms that are out there. So whether it be Zoom, whether it be Google Meet, used to be called Google Hangouts, whether it's FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, Skype, House Party, whatever it is, whenever I use the word platform, that's what I'm referring to, okay? And so the first thing that I would do if I were you, which I'm sure a lot of you have probably already done, is just to make a list. You personally make a list of your chapter's program of work, right, your POW, and what, based off of what your POWs look like over the past couple of years, all right? If you are a first-time advisor, I'm sure you've already done your research on what a program of work should look like for a HOSA chapter. If you haven't, go to the national website. There's a resource there listing out what a program of work should look like, some sample program of works. Basically, it's all the activities that a HOSA chapter could be and some of them should be involved in. So you make that full list of your program of work, and then the next thing to do is to go one by one and identify to the best of your ability which of these three categories does each of those program of work elements fall into. Is it a yes, this program of work activity absolutely can be done virtually? Is it a maybe, meaning we're going to have to get creative with it, it's going to have to change a lot, but yeah, maybe, or is it a no? There's just absolutely no way, based off of my school's rules and regulations for social distancing and for getting people together, we just can't make that program of work activity happen as we've done in the past. So is it a yes? Is it a maybe? Is it a no? And then take those activities that are both yeses and maybes, and then I'd like you to identify which ones do you really believe you want to get accomplished with your membership this year. Okay, and then if you know that you could have already been leading and advising in those areas and you haven't yet, don't worry about it. Okay, don't feel guilty about that. I mean, obviously you've been just doing your absolute best, as all teachers have, just trying to get the students taught, right? So don't worry about that. But now is your opportunity, right, to begin it now, to begin that hard work now. And what I'd like to encourage you to do is, if you've already got them elected, which if you haven't, let's make that happen as quickly as possible, empower your chapter officer team to take the lead on coming up with a lot of ideas as it pertains to the yeses and the maybes of the program of work activities, okay? And so really the first step there, I believe, with the chapter officer team, because they are so technologically more advanced than us that are more advanced in years, as it were, is they can, please write this down, your chapter officer team can actually advise you on which platforms would best fit which activity, all right? So which platform, i.e. again, by platform I mean Zoom, Google Meet, right, Google Classroom, Skype, FaceTime, whatever, best fits and would really work for each of those program of work activities. Now once you've got those two things done, what's my yeses and maybes, and then with my chapter officer team, what's the platform that best fits each of them, then you can really start going to work, okay? So following are some ideas on how to get and keep your members engaged in a virtual world. I really do believe it begins with the chapter officer team meetings. Okay, so here's a few things to write down, and if you need to push pause during these lessons at any time just to stay caught up with me, then feel free to do that. So some of these are actually, these ideas when it comes to chapter officer team meetings should be followed really in my mind, whether it's during the virtual world or not, but they are even more important now because it is so easy to get disconnected during the virtual world. So the first thing for your chapter officer team meetings is to set and adhere to a regular schedule. Is it once a week? Is it once every week? Once every other week? Set and adhere to that schedule. It's very important that we communicate what that is, and it's very important that we stick to it. So that's number one. Number two is you as an advisor, or follow a strategy that you've already developed, put together an agenda beforehand. Very important that we have an agenda beforehand, and not only that we put an agenda together, but that we get that communicated out to all of our chapter officer team members. Now, the additional tip here, when you communicate it out, the agenda out to your chapter officer team members, is that there are assignments that are attached to names for each of the agenda items, so that the officer team members know, based off of either their title, i.e. reporter, historian, secretary, treasurer, what have you, or based off of just something that they've been assigned to in terms of a project or a certain program of work element, that they know, based off of the agenda and their name beside it, that they're going to need to come to the officer team meeting virtually, right, with homework done, so that they will be ready and you will be ready to maximize that chapter officer team meeting. And obviously send that agenda far enough in advance so that all of your officers can have enough time to prepare. Now once that meeting begins, allow the officers to lead the discussion, okay? Allow the officers, now you may need to, or have your president do it, call on officer team members to speak up and to talk about whatever they have prepared for the meeting, but allow them to lead the discussion. And here's my last point when it pertains to the chapter officer team meeting, is to make sure at the end of the meeting for sure, and while the meeting is going on, that you set clear and concrete accountability markers for each of the, here's what we're going to do about what we just talked about, okay? Who is doing it? Who's going to be held accountable? What are they going to do? When are they going to do it by? How are they going to do it and why? Right? So it's the who, what, when, where, and why, and how. So because we're in that virtual world and we're not physically together as much, It's very important that we set those accountability markers. So your chapter officer team meetings, in my mind, what work goes into those really makes a great big difference. What should you be talking about during your chapter officer team meetings? Well, here's some ideas that as it pertains to program of work activities that can still happen virtually. Community service can still happen virtually. Fundraising can still happen virtually. Matter of fact, I've been involved with my friend Kelly Barnes in a fundraising project called National Gold Fundraising that provides a digital coupon book that allows HOSA chapters to be able to raise funds digitally, totally hands-off, simply by sending out text message and emails. That's an example of how we can do something on our program of work list, which is fundraise, but still do it in a virtual world. Obviously, your marketing and your public relations needs can definitely be done digitally, and even more so in our virtual world. State competitive events, planning, and practice. If we really get focused on this, then we can do, we meaning your chapter, can do just as much state competitive events, planning, and practice, even virtually. Now, I know that a lot of our state competitive events are very hands-on, right? I have to have a fake dead person in front of me, as an example. Well, you can still be connected over FaceTime or be connected on a Zoom call and still watch and learn and connect. Here's an idea for you to talk about during your next chapter officer team meeting. Attend industry-focused conferences virtually. There are a lot of, and I know this as a professional speaker for a fact, a lot of annual industry conferences that are gone totally virtual, right? Well, they allow, as you more than likely know, allow students to attend those conferences, even when they're in person, and for sure now virtually. So reach out, find those. That's a cool way to allow your members to still stay engaged and to actually do some real important networking with industry leaders. And then the last thing on my list of ideas for you as it pertains to what to talk about during your next chapter officer team meeting is some career prep activities. Mock interviews can be done over a virtual platform. Virtually connecting with community health organizations or hospitals. Obviously, setting up some type of game plan where there's learning via YouTube, TED Talks, and the other, even Netflix, Amazon Prime documentaries where we can learn over existing video platforms, but then connect and talk about them and even watch them together over our virtual platforms. So those are just a few ideas to talk about as it pertains to your chapter officers during their regularly scheduled meetings, getting your membership more actively involved in HOSA activities. And as it pertains to your chapter meetings, my final thought during our time together today, as it pertains to your chapter meetings, follow some of those same rules as I outlined with your chapter officer meetings. Set and adhere to a regular schedule. Allow your officer team to take the lead and really be in charge of those meetings. A very important guideline for your chapter meetings, where you've got a good number of folks that, depend on the size of your chapter, that are dialing in, so to speak, is to set clear and simple guidelines that limit too much chatting, either verbally or using the chat feature of our platforms, so that you can help keep the meeting focused. And also, take care of the business part of your regular chapter meetings, but then do some research and figure out a way that you can do some team building and some social interaction and have some fun during those chapter meetings as well. Matter of fact, I've got a lot of ideas for that one, so shoot me over an email if you'd like a list of some ideas that you can include to do some team building and some social interaction activities virtually. Right? Just send me an email to owner, OWNER, @yournextspeaker.com. Hey, that's all I've got in time today. Thank you for listening. Good luck with your students. Please keep in mind, doing something virtual is better than doing nothing at all. And I know that you're going to do a great job at it. Thanks for advising your students and your HOSA members.